Have you ever wondered why some of the most attractive men, the ones who seem to have everything, looks, charm, confidence, rarely end up with the kind of women everyone assumes they could have? It's strange, isn't it? You see a man who turns heads wherever he goes, but behind the surface he's alone, misunderstood, and often questioning why love feels just out of reach. Because the truth is, attraction alone doesn't guarantee connection. And in the modern world, where beauty is broadcast and validation is currency, something much deeper determines who truly finds love that lasts. Many people think that good looks should automatically open every door, especially in relationships. But beauty, both male and female, isn't enough to hold someone's heart. The handsome man might have the face that others envy, but he often carries an invisible burden, the pressure of perception. Everyone assumes he's confident, that he has options, that he never struggles. Yet beneath that surface, many attractive men live with quiet doubts. They wonder if someone will ever love them beyond the image, beyond the attention, beyond the assumptions. Because what people see is not always what they understand. When a man grows up being admired for his appearance, he's often admired for something external, something he didn't build, something he didn't earn. And over time, he begins to confuse admiration with affection, validation with value. He becomes addicted to the idea of being wanted but disconnected from the experience of being truly seen. That's why many handsome men end up chasing admiration instead of connection. They attract attention but repel authenticity, not because they want to, but because they've been taught that appearance is enough. And here's the irony. Beautiful women see through that faster than anyone. They've lived it. They know what it's like to be seen but not understood, to be wanted for how they look but not for who they are. So when a handsome man approaches a beautiful woman with only surface-level energy, she feels it instantly. It's not arrogance that turns her away, it's emptiness. Because deep down, she's not looking for another mirror of her own experience. She's looking for emotional depth, grounded strength, and a sense of safety that can only come from a man who's done the inner work to know his worth beyond his reflection. This is the quiet truth most people never talk about. The connection between two people isn't built on how they look standing next to each other. It's built on how they feel standing together when no one's watching. It's built on respect, understanding, and emotional honesty. And that's where many handsome men struggle, because the world has rewarded their surface for so long that they've never been challenged to go deeper. They think they have to perform perfection when, in reality, vulnerability is what wins hearts. So if you've ever felt frustrated, wondering why attraction doesn't equal love, remember this: appearance may start the story, but character writes the ending. The most magnetic energy in the world isn't beauty, it's authenticity. And once a man stops trying to prove his worth and starts living it, everything changes. The kind of woman he attracts shifts. The kind of connection he builds transforms. Stay with this message, because what comes next will show you the real reason true beauty doesn't meet the eye. It's found in the heart, the mind, and the courage to become someone unforgettable from the inside out. The truth that many men never face is that being desired and being valued are not the same thing. Desire can be loud, exciting, and fleeting, but value is quiet, steady, and lasting. A man who builds his identity on how others see him becomes trapped in a fragile kind of confidence, one that depends on attention to survive. When that attention fades, so does his sense of worth. But the man who builds his identity on who he is when no one is watching, who finds pride in discipline, purpose, and growth, he becomes magnetic in a way that looks can never replicate. What keeps most handsome men from finding meaningful love isn't their appearance, it's their attachment to it. They don't realize that the same image that attracts people also creates distance. It invites admiration, but blocks emotional intimacy. Because when a person seems too perfect, others assume they don't need love, they don't need care, they don't need depth. And slowly, that illusion isolates them. The world sees their face, but not their fears. The world praises their image, but never touches their soul. And without emotional exposure, even the most beautiful life begins to feel hollow. Real connection requires risk. The risk of not being enough, the risk of rejection, the risk of being misunderstood. But that's where love lives. It grows in the soil of vulnerability, not perfection. A man who hides behind charm and confidence may win interest, but not intimacy. Because real love doesn't respond to performance. It responds to presence. A woman who is truly beautiful in spirit doesn't crave a flawless man. She craves a man who can stand raw in his truth, unmasked, unguarded, unafraid to show emotion. That's the kind of strength that commands respect. The deeper psychology behind attraction is energy. People may be drawn to beauty at first, but they stay because of energy. How someone makes them feel about themselves. A man who radiates authenticity, groundedness, and inner calm gives off a kind of safety that beauty alone can't create. He doesn't chase validation. He embodies it. His value doesn't depend on being wanted. It's rooted in self-acceptance. That's the kind of presence that pulls others closer, not because he's perfect, but because he's real. Many men never experience this transformation because they never allow themselves to step out of the identity that others built for them. They've been told they're lucky to be attractive, but no one teaches them that real luck is in having emotional intelligence, empathy, and self-awareness. Those are the traits that make a man unforgettable. They're what make him stand out in a world full of surface-level connections and shallow admiration. So when a handsome man wonders why a beautiful woman chooses someone less conventionally attractive, it's often because that man offers something deeper, a sense of emotional truth. He listens without performing. He gives without expecting. He connects without control. And in that energy, she feels seen, understood, and safe. That's something no amount of physical beauty can compete with. Because love doesn't live in what the eyes can see. It lives in what the heart can feel. Every man has the power to unlock that level of depth. But it requires courage. The courage to stop hiding behind the mask of perfection. The courage to embrace imperfection as part of strength. And the courage to connect without fear of loss. Once a man understands this, he no longer needs to chase beauty. He attracts it naturally, because nothing is more captivating than a man who is fully unapologetically himself. What most men don't realize is that attraction begins with what's visible, but connection begins with what's invisible. It's not the face that draws someone close. It's the frequency behind it. It's the energy you carry when you walk into a room, the calm confidence that doesn't need validation, the quiet power that speaks without words. Handsomeness might capture attention, but emotional energy captures hearts. And when a man's energy is rooted in insecurity or ego, no matter how good he looks, that energy repels depth. Because people don't fall in love with what's flawless, they fall in love with what feels real. When a man is driven by the need to prove himself, everything he does carries tension. His compliments sound rehearsed, his confidence feels forced, and his presence feels performative. But when a man is grounded, when he's not trying to be chosen but simply expressing who he is, his authenticity becomes magnetic. Women feel that. They sense it in his tone, in his silence, in how he listens. That's the kind of presence that dissolves resistance. Because it's not charm that wins a woman's trust. It's consistency. It's showing up with clarity instead of pretending with confidence. Beautiful women crave a kind of emotional certainty that few men provide. They meet countless men who try to impress them, but very few who make them feel safe enough to relax, to breathe, to be themselves. And that safety doesn't come from dominance. It comes from emotional maturity. It's the man who doesn't flinch when she's emotional, who doesn't retreat when she's distant, who doesn't crumble when she tests his patience. It's the man who holds his peace when everything around him is chaos. That kind of energy doesn't need to chase love. It attracts it effortlessly. The mistake many handsome men make is confusing being desired with being chosen. Desire is fleeting. It's built on fantasy, but being chosen is spiritual. It's built on connection. A man can be desired for his face, his body, his charisma, but he's chosen for his heart, his integrity, and his emotional depth. That's what beautiful women long for, even if they don't say it out loud. They want to stand beside a man who mirrors their strength, not their insecurities. A man who doesn't just look good on the outside, but feels grounded on the inside. To reach that level, a man must be willing to confront himself. He must be brave enough to look beyond the compliments, beyond the attention, and ask, who am I when no one is watching? Because that's where true confidence is born. Not in being admired, but in being aligned. Not in seeking validation, but in living from purpose. The moment a man starts leading himself, he stops begging for love. He stops performing for approval. He becomes whole. And that wholeness is the most irresistible form of attraction there is. The world may still reward looks, but life rewards substance. Looks fade. Attention fades, but presence, real, grounded, evolved presence, only deepens with time. That's why the man who learns to build emotional strength outlasts the man who relies on surface attraction. Because when the noise of the world fades and the masks come off, it's not beauty that stands, it's depth. And the deeper you become, the more naturally love finds you. A man becomes truly powerful the moment he stops trying to impress and starts trying to understand. Because understanding creates connection, and connection creates attraction that lasts beyond physical beauty. Most men spend their energy trying to be seen, while the rare few focus on seeing others. They listen not to reply, but to feel. They speak not to dominate, but to connect. That subtle shift in energy transforms everything. When a man sees beyond appearances, he begins to attract women who see beyond his, and that's where real chemistry begins. Not from eyes meeting, but from souls recognizing each other's depth. Handsome men often lose in love because they underestimate the intelligence of emotion. They believe attraction is about looks, when in truth, it's about resonance. Every word you speak, every gesture you make carries emotional frequency. If that frequency is built on insecurity or ego, no amount of beauty can mask it. But if it's built on calmness, empathy, and inner strength, it becomes irresistible. Because the human heart doesn't respond to perfection, it responds to peace. And the man who radiates peace, who carries himself with quiet confidence and emotional intelligence, becomes unforgettable. Many men don't realize that women are emotional sensors. They can feel authenticity long before they can explain it. A woman may be drawn to a man's appearance, but she stays for his emotional climate, the way he makes her feel safe in her own vulnerability. A man who's deeply secure allows a woman to drop her guard. He gives her the freedom to express her emotions without fear of judgment or rejection. That's what creates emotional intimacy, the invisible bridge that connects two souls on a level far beyond attraction. To reach that level, a man must stop competing and start growing. Competing keeps you trapped in comparison. Growing liberates you from it. When your worth depends on being better than others, you'll always feel threatened. But when your worth comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for, no one can take that from you. That kind of stability is rare, and beautiful women who are often surrounded by superficial attention can feel its rarity instantly. They crave it because it represents safety in a world obsessed with surface. The truth is, every man is born with the potential to be captivating, but only those who evolve emotionally reach that potential fully. You can't be truly attractive until you've faced your own emptiness and learned to fill it with purpose. You can't be emotionally strong until you've allowed yourself to feel deeply, to fail, to hurt, to grow. Pain refines presence. Vulnerability builds power. The man who has faced himself no longer fears losing anyone because he's already found everything within. That's what makes him stand out. Not the face, not the physique, but the energy of completion. He doesn't chase beauty because he understands that beauty flows naturally toward peace. He doesn't compete for love because he lives in alignment with it. And in that alignment, he becomes both grounded and magnetic, untouchable by insecurity, unstoppable in his purpose, and unforgettable to anyone who crosses his path. When a man becomes whole, he stops asking why things don't work out. He knows the answer. He realizes love isn't something to win. It's something to reflect. And the more depth he creates within, the more love he attracts without. Because in the end, beauty doesn't belong to the most handsome. It belongs to the most awake. A man's greatest transformation begins when he stops chasing validation and starts mastering emotional awareness. Because the truth is, the world teaches men how to look good, but not how to feel deeply. It glorifies strength without softness, confidence without compassion, power without peace. Yet, what truly separates the rare man from the ordinary is his ability to balance both strength and sensitivity. The man who learns to feel deeply without losing direction, who can express emotion without losing control, becomes someone who cannot be replaced. He becomes a man of substance in a world addicted to surfaces. The reason many handsome men fail in love is not because they aren't enough. It's because they've been taught to measure love by attraction, not by alignment. They've been told to impress instead of connect, to pursue instead of understand. But love isn't earned by appearance. It's invited through energy. When a man is emotionally disconnected from himself, no matter how perfect his image appears, he unconsciously creates distance. His presence feels incomplete. His words sound polished, but his energy feels hollow. And that emptiness pushes away the very kind of woman he's trying to attract. What every man must learn is that emotional presence is more powerful than physical perfection. Presence means being grounded in the moment, fully there, without needing to prove anything. It's the ability to listen deeply, to feel genuinely, and to express authentically. That kind of presence is rare because it requires courage. It means letting go of control, removing the armor, and allowing another person to see your humanity. Most men avoid that level of vulnerability because it feels like weakness. But it's the opposite. It's strength in its purest form. Because when you're no longer afraid of being seen, you become unstoppable. The psychology behind attraction reveals something powerful. Women are drawn not to perfection, but to authenticity and emotional safety. A man who is emotionally intelligent radiates a sense of calm that makes others feel secure. He doesn't react impulsively, he responds consciously. He doesn't need to dominate, he leads through emotional steadiness. That kind of energy speaks directly to the subconscious. It signals maturity, stability, and trust. It says, you're safe here. And in that safety, connection flourishes. Every man carries two versions of himself, the one he shows to the world and the one he hides within. The deeper he hides his real self, the more disconnected he becomes. But when he starts integrating his inner truth, when he accepts his pain, his fears, his imperfections, he begins to glow differently. That glow isn't about how he looks, it's about how he feels. It's the light of authenticity, and it's magnetic. People feel drawn to him, not because he's perfect, but because he's real. The real lesson is that beauty fades, admiration fades, but emotional resonance never dies. The man who builds himself from the inside out never worries about losing love, because his energy continuously creates it. He doesn't try to attract women, he attracts peace. He doesn't seek approval, he lives in alignment. And from that alignment, love finds him naturally, deeper, stronger, and more lasting than anything built on appearance. That's when a man finally understands what true handsomeness means. It's not a reflection in the mirror. It's the reflection of his energy, his integrity, and his emotional depth. When a man learns to embody that truth, he no longer wonders why he hasn't found the right woman. He becomes the kind of man the right woman never wants to lose. A man who learns to master himself no longer chases anything outside of him. He stops begging for attention, stops proving his worth, and stops measuring his value by who notices him. Because he understands that external validation is temporary, but inner validation is eternal. The strongest men are not the loudest, they are the calmest. They move through the world with quiet certainty, knowing that what S meant for them cannot be taken, and what leaves was never aligned. That kind of mindset doesn't just attract love, it commands respect. It creates a gravitational pull that no physical beauty can compete with. When a man's confidence is built on approval, it cracks easily. But when it's built on self-respect, it becomes unshakable. He doesn't need constant praise to feel secure, because his sense of self isn't rented, it's owned. He doesn't confuse attention with affection, or lust with love. He can admire beauty without needing to possess it, and that self-control makes him far more attractive than the man who's constantly seeking to impress. Because women can feel the difference between a man who wants to be admired and a man who's simply at peace with himself. One seeks to consume, the other seeks to connect. The man who is emotionally awake becomes a mirror of emotional stability. He doesn't get lost in mind games or drama because his focus is on clarity, not chaos. His energy communicates that he knows who he is, what he wants, and what he stands for. That emotional certainty creates safety, and safety is the foundation of attraction. It's the reason why a woman can stand next to a man who isn't conventionally handsome and still feel an overwhelming pull toward him, because his presence calms her spirit while his energy challenges her soul. That balance of strength and softness is the rarest combination in the world. The more a man grows internally, the less he fears rejection. Because rejection no longer means he's not enough. It simply means there's a lack of alignment. That freedom from fear changes his entire energy. He stops overthinking his words, his appearance, his approach. He becomes present, grounded, natural. And in that authenticity, his energy shifts from seeking to offering. He no longer walks into a room wondering who will like him. He enters asking how he can bring peace, value, and light to the space. That mindset separates the confident from the insecure, the fulfilled from the desperate, the chosen from the chasing. A truly powerful man doesn't compete for love. He creates it through who he is. He understands that real attraction isn't about what you show. It's about what you project. You attract not what you want, but what you are. And when you become the embodiment of inner strength, emotional stability, and genuine kindness, life naturally brings people who match that frequency. That's when love stops being something to find and becomes something to share. Every man has the choice to evolve, to move from chasing beauty to becoming beauty, from needing attention to radiating energy, from pretending to be confident to living with quiet power. The moment he chooses authenticity over appearance, depth over ego, and peace over performance, he transforms from being attractive to being unforgettable. Because real beauty doesn't fade and real confidence doesn't shout. It simply exists, steady, calm, and undeniably powerful. The moment a man stops living for the approval of others, his energy changes completely. He stops chasing outcomes and starts mastering alignment. His presence becomes calm but commanding, silent but magnetic. Because people can sense when someone is no longer driven by fear or need. They feel the stillness, the self-control, the quiet confidence that comes from a man who knows his worth deeply and doesn't need anyone to confirm it. That's the kind of energy that draws others in effortlessly. It's not loud, it's not forced, it's real. Many men never reach this state because they confuse confidence with ego. Ego is built on illusion. It needs to be fed constantly. It needs praise, attention, validation. But true confidence is rooted in self-respect. It doesn't shout, it simply is. The man who embodies this kind of confidence doesn't try to prove that he's enough. He knows he is. And because he knows, his energy speaks louder than words ever could. That's why people feel safe around him. That's why his silence carries weight and his presence leaves an imprint. He doesn't just walk into a room, he anchors it. The greatest mistake a man can make is to think that love is something to win. Love isn't a prize, it's a mirror. It reflects who you are internally. If you're insecure, you attract confusion. If you're grounded, you attract peace. If you're whole, you attract wholeness. The relationships in your life are not random. They're reflections of your energy. And when you finally realize that, you stop blaming circumstances and start mastering your inner world. Because the moment you become emotionally aligned, the right people start appearing without effort. Beautiful women are drawn to men who are emotionally stable. Not because of status or looks, but because stability feels like safety in a chaotic world. They want a man who can hold space without judgment, who doesn't crumble under pressure, who doesn't confuse control with strength. True masculine energy is not about dominance. It's about direction. It's about leading through clarity, not control, compassion, not coercion. When a man operates from that energy, he stops needing to impress anyone. His life itself becomes the statement. Every man must understand that his greatest power lies in emotional regulation. The ability to remain centered when life tests him, to respond with intention instead of reaction, is what defines maturity. Because women don't fall in love with potential. They fall in love with peace. They fall in love with how they feel in your presence. And if your energy brings calm instead of chaos, certainty instead of confusion, you become unforgettable. That's the kind of attraction that doesn't fade with time. It grows stronger because it's built on depth, not desire. True strength is not physical. It's spiritual. It's the strength to choose growth when it's uncomfortable, to stay kind when it's easier to be cold, to stay grounded when the world tries to shake you. That's what separates men who live with purpose from those who live with pretense. The man who builds this kind of strength doesn't chase beauty. He becomes beauty in motion. He becomes proof that real power doesn't dominate. It transforms. And when you reach that level, love no longer feels like something to find. It becomes something you naturally attract. Because everything about your presence radiates peace, truth, and emotional mastery. The man who has learned to master his emotions becomes untouchable, not because he avoids feeling, but because he understands it. He no longer reacts from pain. He responds from awareness. He no longer seeks to control others. He seeks to understand himself. And that shift in consciousness changes everything. His power is no longer external, it comes from within. Every challenge becomes a lesson. Every rejection becomes redirection. Every failure becomes a mirror guiding him toward growth. That's when he stops being a boy chasing validation and becomes a man radiating purpose. The reason many men never reach this state is because they fear the silence. They fear being alone long enough to meet their true self. They fill their lives with noise, distractions, achievements, attention, anything to avoid hearing the truth that lives beneath their image. But silence is where transformation happens. When a man learns to sit with himself, to face his insecurities without running, he begins to awaken the kind of power that no one can take from him. It's in that solitude that confidence becomes real. It's in that stillness that he meets his higher self. A man's outer world is always a reflection of his inner state. If his inner world is chaotic, no relationship will bring him peace. If his heart is unsettled, even love will feel unstable. But once he begins to cultivate inner harmony, everything around him aligns, because you can't attract what you aren't ready to hold. When a man finds peace within himself, he stops chasing people who disturb it. He stops needing validation from those who can't offer depth. His standards shift, his energy refines, and without even realizing it, he begins to attract people who match his new level of calm and clarity. Beautiful women are drawn to that stillness because it's rare. They encounter men who talk about strength but break under pressure, who claim confidence but crumble under ego. But when they meet a man who carries peace in his eyes and purpose in his presence, something inside them softens. They feel safe, not because he's perfect, but because he's real. His energy doesn't demand, it allows. It doesn't seek, it welcomes. That's what true masculine energy feels like. It's not aggression, it's direction. It's not about overpowering, it's about uplifting. And that energy is what connects the heart of a man to the soul of a woman. To reach that level, a man must be willing to let go of everything superficial. The approval, the pride, the performance. He must be willing to lose the image to find the essence, because the more he detaches from how he's perceived, the more authentic his energy becomes. And authenticity is magnetic. It's what turns admiration into respect, attraction into connection, and connection into love. The man who walks in truth doesn't have to chase what's meant for him. Life begins to align naturally, because truth always calls truth home. When a man reaches this level of awareness, he no longer wonders why he doesn't end up with certain women. He understands that not every connection is meant to last. Some exist to awaken him. Some come to teach him what he still needs to heal. And once he learns, he stops blaming others and starts thanking life. Because he realizes the journey was never about finding the perfect partner. It was about becoming the man who's ready for one. The man who finally understands himself, no longer looks for completion in someone else. He stops seeking to be chosen because he has already chosen himself. That shift in energy changes the way he moves through life. He no longer chases connection out of loneliness, but attracts it from abundance. He no longer clings to people who validate his ego because he values his peace more than his pride. This is where real power begins. The kind of power that isn't loud, but deeply felt. The kind that doesn't need to prove, only to exist. When a man reaches this place of inner certainty, he becomes immune to emotional games. He doesn't fall for temporary attention disguised as love. He doesn't confuse chaos for passion. He doesn't mistake desire for destiny. He knows that real love is not found in intensity, but in consistency. He no longer wants someone who excites his insecurities. He wants someone who matches his peace. That level of awareness separates him from most, because he no longer operates from need, but from choice. And when a man moves from choice, he becomes unstoppable. The truth is, emotional maturity is the highest form of attractiveness. It's not about having all the answers. It's about being grounded enough to handle the questions. A woman feels it instantly when she's in the presence of a man who has done the inner work. His energy feels settled, not searching. His presence feels safe, not suffocating. He doesn't need to dominate her to feel powerful. His calmness is his strength. He doesn't seek to be understood before understanding her, because he knows real connection is built on empathy, not ego. This is the man beautiful women truly desire, not the one who turns heads, but the one who turns chaos into calm, the one who doesn't need to outshine her beauty because he recognizes his own worth silently, the one who doesn't compete with her strength but cherishes it, the one who doesn't fear her independence because he is not threatened by her light. He celebrates it, because the man who knows himself never fears a woman who knows her worth. He sees her not as a challenge, but as a reflection of his own growth. When a man evolves to this level, love becomes a sacred exchange, not an emotional battlefield. It's no longer about control or conquest. It's about mutual elevation. He gives without losing himself. He loves without attachment. He stands firm in who he is and allows love to flow freely because he trusts his foundation. He's no longer trying to be the most handsome man in the room. He's trying to be the most conscious one. And that consciousness becomes his greatest magnet. The most beautiful truth is that once a man reaches this level of emotional and spiritual awareness, he finally understands why things never worked out before. He sees that every disappointment was preparation. Every rejection was protection. Every heartbreak was a mirror reflecting the parts of himself he needed to heal. And when healing replaces hurt, clarity replaces confusion. That's when love finds him effortlessly, not because he needs it, but because he's ready to hold it. Because in the end, real beauty doesn't belong to those who look perfect. It belongs to those who live in truth.